Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the SOMM TV Podcast. My name is Jason Wise. On today's pod, we are going to talk about the new film, newish, called The Menu. I have on the podcast a perennial favorite, Mr. Jonah Beer, the co-founder of Pilcrow Wine. Is that what you like your introduction to be, Jonah?
I feel like co-founder is probably accurate, although I would say a sub-co-founder. You know, the wife really does most of the work.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm trying to build you up here.
I love it. Thank you.
You know, you and I have sort of become famous amongst my mom, whatever cats are in the room when someone leaves a podcast playing, for talking about movies that have to do with wine, food, wine cameos, all of this type of stuff. So any excuse I have with you to do this, but The Menu, I dare say this is sort of a Super Bowl of our type of podcasting for a movie like this to come out. And boy, do I have thoughts.
Yeah, well, thank you for bringing me back and allowing us to opine wildly on film and anything that we feel like, I guess. I think that you are correct. It feels like The Menu came along almost like it was gift wrapped for us. And
it did.
Yes, and I'm sure you have thoughts. And we have not discussed this at all prior. We're coming in cold.
One of those rare ones where we're like, no outline. We're just going to talk. Now, you know, I can seamlessly put the plug for SOMM TV in here because when we created SOMM TV, my love of the sort of fusion of story and food and wine and all of these things, which, as you know, if you subscribe and you watch this stuff, we have a bunch of licensed films, everything from Bottle Shock to a bunch of the Year in Burgundies and a bunch of food films. Great stuff up there. And of course, our original stuff. But this type of movie and its evolution, which we're going to try, after we talk about The Menu, we're going to talk about two films we think really got us to where we are with this kind of foodie-centric film that the normal person would actually watch. And, you know, I look forward to that very much because we each have our pick about what's the most important film in that regard. But I just want to start by saying, subscribe to SOMM TV. Do that, sommtv.com, because you need to do that. But then also say, I don't want to editorialize here too much, but when The Menu came out and it was in theaters, and then it landed on HBO Max, I cannot tell you the amount of people who were like, have you watched it? Have you watched it? Have you watched it? And it was a nonstop thing for me. And I love this cast. There are members of this cast, which we'll get to, that I would watch them do anything.
Without a doubt.
I generally, not to sound like a jerk here, but I generally walk into these types of movies kind of being ready to hate them. Can you sympathize with this?
I wouldn't say sympathize, but I can certainly appreciate it, especially from you. You know, when you refer to things as a film, there's there's an aura of film pretension that surrounds you. So of course you're going to walk in thinking you want to hate it, right?
Well, I think it's more like, I think the analogy would be anybody listening to this either has a passion or a knowledge of wine. And so when you watch a wine film, you probably go in going, ugh, I'm going to hate something about this because they're going to get something wrong or it's going to be too close to home, maybe. And it's kind of like, if you're a plumber and you're watching a plumber film, it's kind of one of these things where you're like, oh, for Christ's sake, you know, the new version of Super Mario Brothers. Anyways, I just think that it comes with this, like, this better either be really good or I'm not going to like it. Yeah. And I just want to say at the beginning of this pod that The Menu didn't just deliver for me. I think this is one of the year's best movies. I loved it so much.
It hit it right out of the park. And I will tell you that Sarah and I watched The Menu, and then the next night we watched Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Right.
And like for the next 2 weeks, all she could say was, those are two of the strangest, most brilliant films that I've seen. You know, with that kind of sense of shock that you got the first time you saw Pulp Fiction, you know, like it was that same kind of vibe. But The Menu to me stood out. So I'm with you 100%. It over delivers.
All right. So Jonah, just a cold, not looking at any kind of thing. How do you summarize The Menu? And for anyone who has not seen it, we're obviously going to spoil the hell out of this film.
Yeah, it's over.
So be warned at this point. If you haven't seen it, go watch it and come back to us. Or, you know, some things happen in this movie that I will say are delightful if you don't know they're going to happen.
Oh, no.
Okay, so
you kind of have to go into it cold. So I would say if you haven't seen it, definitely pause this podcast right here. And Jason's mom, you're probably not going to watch it. So you can listen to it. No, she's watched it.
I talked to my mother. My mother was very excited that we were going to talk about this film because she had a lot of thoughts as well.
Well, so DM me later.
What is the synopsis for?
Okay, so synopsis, like in the kind of the broad general sense, right, is this is a destination restaurant, like a 3 Michelin star destination restaurant that's in one of these remote, Noma, Faviken kind of places, like where you've got to be a tourist to travel. I mean, you got to get on a boat. There's no way to get there otherwise. 12 tables, impossible reservation. So it's kind of the story of a night in this restaurant where the chef owner curates a group of people to come and dine, every guest specifically selected to be there on this night. And each one kind of has a different role to play, I guess you could say. And in the over the course of the evening, well, I guess here come the spoilers. It turns into kind of a black comedy horror, right? It's not like it goes. And when it makes that hard left turn, when the sous chef comes out to deliver his first contribution to the evening, sous chef's mess or whatever it was called. Like, I mean, I snapped back and thought, what the hell is this? So that's where the horror bit kind of sets in. But what unfolds is you realize that each person was brought there, maybe in part because they represent something of the absurdity of this kind of fine dining, tourist dining culture, right? Like they go after I was not surprised, let's put it this way, to find out that one of the writers is also a writer for The Onion. Like there was so much in here that feels like it could have been a headline in The Onion, And I feel like they did a great job. So you have John Leguizamo, who represents the Hollywood has-been that's constantly saying that he's best friends with the chef when he's never met the chef. You've got the overly hyped foodie who's knows what a Paco jet is and can't wait to demonstrate his knowledge to his prostitute date that he's brought for the evening.
Played by Nicholas Hoult. I mean, the cast in this movie, we should just take a second and talk about the cast. It is one of the better ensemble type casts that I've seen in a long time. And back to the production of it, it's really important to mention that a producer on this film, and I guarantee someone who contributed, if not to the mood, the story as well, is Adam McKay, who did The Big Short. He did Step Brothers. He was a head writer on SNL for a long time, long time partner with Will Ferrell. Yeah, Don't Look Up. He's to say that he likes satire and fast-paced comedy that is often takes a little bit to be gotten is an understatement. He is a genius when it comes to this type of material. So going back to the cast, you have this Nicholas Hoult character, and I want to dive into these individuals because here's the thing. This is like the very first line of Rounders, the movie Rounders.
Yeah.
One of my favorite starting lines of a film. If you can't spot the sucker at the table, meaning the poker table, if you can't spot the sucker at the table in the first 10 minutes, you are the sucker.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. This particular movie, you either see yourself as one of these characters or you don't know you are one. And so I'm going to tell you, this movie's got our number. All of you foodies listening, all of you people who work in restaurants, it's got our numbers. And I've gone through a wave of trying. We'll get to our interpretations of this film, but with the cast, the Nicholas Hoult character, who is this evangelist for this chef and clearly a person who, he doesn't just, he calls out Chef's Table. As I've seen every episode. Yeah. I know all this stuff. I've gone to all the restaurants.
Yeah.
Oh boy. This is a tough hang for me because
he's great. And and Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays his date for the evening from Queen's Gambit, is outstanding. And I think she's great. Just about perfectly cast as well. And the two of them together, it's there's such an unlikeliness to it that it takes you a little bit to the film to realize she's paid to be there by his character. And I feel like they came across so well, and she is the perfect foil for everyone in there, right? You've got the older couple who's the regulars that can't remember any dish they've ever had, but they have to come, and they don't. And really
the wife in that case is played by Judith Light from Who's the Boss.
Great. Yeah.
She walks on water. This is one of the all-time sort of queens, I would say, in TV and movies. Anyways.
But you're right. You go around and you look, you got the three Goldman Sachs wannabe guys, that are traders that, they know the owner. So he got on the table. The head
investor. The venture capitalist who financed this place, which is, oh boy, as somebody with a company, I can tell you that hits home.
So I think you're right that you really do look around the dining room and you see yourself, and I think I identified which part I am probably, and
oh no,
we'll get to it later. I think I would say we definitely know a lot of these people in our lives, but she, Anya Taylor-Joy, plays the perfect foil for everyone because she calls the bullshit. Like, hey, you're paying him to serve you. Why are you kowtowing to this chef? And we should mention the guy that anchors it all, right?
Ralph Fiennes.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah. He's, Ralph Fiennes is one of the all-time great, I'm trying to think of like nuanced character actor guys. I mean, everything from, and I know that people are like, want me to talk about food and wine and not movies, but I really love movies. And his roles in like Schindler's List or Grand Budapest Hotel or The Constant Gardener or any of these truly great performances where he's a totally different person, but never seems to deviate from the weirdness that he can bring to a role. He was almost too perfect in this movie. He was almost too good.
Dude, you're absolutely right. And I believe Dominique Crenn was either a technical advisor on the film, or certainly they took one of the dishes in the film kind of straight off of her menu at Atelier Crenn. But he plays it so on point that I'm kind of like, holy shit. I was like, have I met this chef before? Like he really nailed it. I mean, impeccable. And so did everyone in the background, all the sous chefs I
very much thought of having a 3-star Michelin chef on this podcast with you and I, but I realized if we had done that, we couldn't talk about the self-aware parody that this movie is doing to the industry.
Yeah.
But the necessary parody. I think if we get into the idea of what is this movie really trying to say, you go through the courses, of which I'm sure we all have our favorite course that is cooked in this movie. There's many courses. I should say we have a show on SOMM TV called Pairings, and it was very painful to watch them show the plating and the text for the meal the same way we did in Pairings. I was like, oh, I'm such a sellout. I didn't realize how much of a sellout I am as a director, but it was also good. I deserved it and needed to see it. And so, I think what this movie is actually trying to say is a big question. And I've gone around and around and around thinking that it doesn't, that it has something malicious to say, but maybe not. And I actually I'm gonna jump right into this with saying, have you ever, and I know you have, that's why you're on the podcast, gone through what's supposed to be an 8 to 12 course tasting menu, and it's really 25 with all the amuse-bouches and all the in-betweeners and all the this and all the foam things that you have to shoot out of a shot glass and the egg that it comes to you, and you have to eat out of the egg, which has caviar on top, and it's like egg on egg on egg, and you're like, okay. I really felt like, this is going to sound crazy, but on my second viewing of this film, I was like, this isn't a parody. This isn't mean. This is what it's exactly like to go through a 3-star Michelin tasting menu. You want to blow your brains out. And if you can't, you want someone to do it for you. And so I really feel like, and this is not all 3-star Michelin restaurants, and it's only when you're in the wrong mood or with the wrong person, or you have eaten in the previous 6 days and you shouldn't have, or something like that. But
you accidentally had lunch.
Yeah, exactly. I think the one that nails this down the most for me is when they do the breadless bread course.
Stunning.
And they bring all the sauces and the dipping, but no bread. And they talk about what the bread would have been.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, that seems like a parody. And you're like, oh, that's a hilarious send-off for some, molecular cooking where they'd be like, this is an ice cream sandwich, except if it was made at 50,000 feet pressure under the sea with, creme de seaweed, but there's no seaweed. Can you find out? It's like the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the breadless dip plate, there's 10 restaurants in Europe that probably are like, they stole this from us.
The breadless bread course, and especially because he immediately kind of goes in a little bit close to the bone when he's introducing the course, and he says bread was meant for peasants and regular people, and of course you are not regular people. Like he's a little bit like, that's the first moment in the movie where you're like, okay, like I'm not sure where this is going, because I came into it cold and I thought maybe it was murder mystery, and not going to be as much as horror as it is. But that course to me was also something that I could not only see someone saying, hey, they ripped me off, but I could see someone doing. Like, I could imagine us being in a very ambitious 1 Michelin star that's bucking for 2. That's like the breadless bread course. It's just the dips. It was fabulous.
I think the most dangerous is the 2-star Michelin restaurant. The ones can be like, oh, this is a banh mi place. It's got 1 Michelin star. The 2-star ones are scary because they're really trying too hard.
Yeah.
And honestly, in most cases, oh boy, the 2-star Michelin restaurant, I would say that's purgatory. You're in purgatory. With you, if you have 1, you're like, hell yes, I got a Michelin star. I'm on the map. You get 3, you're like, all right, now I'm an institution. I got to keep it. You get 2. And you're kind of like, well, how do I get over the river Styx from here? Yeah. So the only way I can do it is to torture diners to the end of their life.
Breadless bread course.
Yes.
So good. So good. And yes, I've had those 3 Michelin star meals that go 40 to 50 courses. And one where we were there for her birthday and it went so late that she went and slept in the car. Like she's like, you can finish the meal on your own. And the SOMM sat down and had like the last 2 sweet courses with me while she slept. So yeah, it can be torturous at times, but before kind of, file the caveat, of course, it's an indulgent way to go and torture me all you want. That's
right, exactly. No, and these restaurants, it is funny too that they walk into the restaurant and she says, how much does it cost? And I believe he says $1,200 a person or $1,400 a person, something like that. It's funny that like, she's like, holy shit. And I was kind of like, that's not that bad for one of these places. I was like, I was kind of like, in a lot of cases, that's kind of like normal for this type of a thing.
Yeah.
And the whole
ride extra.
Exactly. The whole like backing up to the beginning of the film, they're on an island and they're like I don't mean to sound nasty or mean here, but the whole pretension built in of taking you on a tour and showing you all of the things, taking you on the beach and saying, at certain times, all of our food comes from the day. All of our food, the seaweed washes up and the periwinkles that eat off of the seaweed excrete this. And that's what goes to our farming of our mollusks over here and our scallops. And that is real. That is not for camera. Like taking people into your smoke room where you hang meat, and if you did it for one more day, you could die. That is real shit.
Right.
I'm sure many people listening have been to these restaurants and know what I'm talking about. But if you haven't, I just want you to know there are moments of this that almost plays like Thomas Keller didn't know it was a farce and wrote the menu, wrote the what would I do? I mean, I'm not sure. I say this with love because I love this world, but I'm really, really impressed with how accurate, for better or worse, the experience is. And on the plot standpoint, I was a little nervous that it was going to go the way that is probably the biggest cliche in the horror food film genre, in that they're going to end up eating each other, that's the way all this goes. There's a famous film called The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover, done by Peter Greenaway, that is very seminal. And I thought this was going to be, hey, the younger generation hasn't seen that film, let's rehash it. And the direction it went was fresh and wonderful. Yeah. So I ask you, Jonah, is this a film that likes or hates the restaurant foodie world that has been created and just blown up to ad nauseum with Chef's Table?
I think this is a film that loves that world.
Great. And I agree.
And in a way, it had to be that way, or this film would come across mean and almost like just throwing stones at the emperor in a certain way, right? But because it comes across as like, I don't think that anyone there dislikes it, I think that they're just like, man, yeah, it's gotten torturous at times and it's certainly gotten ahead of itself, and it certainly can stand to have some of the air taken out of the big balloon that is the fine dining world. But no, I don't think it was scoffing at it at all. I think it loves it. And I think it's also like, this is a funny and interesting twist on what could happen. And the fact that it nails it, to me, it's more skewering of the customers that go than it is of the chefs in the restaurant and the pretense that comes with it, right?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a moment in the film when the first person is killed, and it's a sous chef, and he shoots himself in the head for the course.
And in the dining room.
And the waiters or not the waiters, the diners are they're so unwilling to believe that this could possibly have just happened that 2/3 to 3/4 of them are like, no, this is part of the experience. This is part of the theatrics. This is why it's so expensive, because they do crazy stuff. And like, it's like the idea that like, if you go in and somebody tells you this is this duck breast, which is cooked, it's aged for this amount, it's cooked at this temperature. We sourced it from one island near the Falkland Islands, and there's only 50 of them left, and we breed them. And if 51 of them are there, we kill the 51st. You take that with such belief in these restaurants because A, you paid to be there. B, you went to great effort to be there in every case. There's none of these restaurants do you accidentally find yourself at 4 p.m. like, oh, you have an extra ticket? I'll go. Which was which is why it's so great to see it through the eyes of the Anya Taylor-Joy character, because she is thrown into this restaurant. So the moment that hit home the most for me, and when I realized not only do I love this film, but this is a film that will be in my life forever, is when Anya Taylor-Joy looks at her date, played by Nicholas Hoult, who knew that they were going there to die. They were all going to die. And she said, you brought me here knowing I was going to die. Okay, so here's the thing. I had a dinner with my wife one time at one of these, at a 3-star Michelin restaurant. And it was supposed to be, it's a 6 p.m. seating.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to be somewhere at 10. Okay. And it got to be
you guys
about
were young
9.
and lively then.
Oh, no, this was like, this is prior to children and stuff. So it's about 9:40, and I see her like nervously looking. She's picked up the little menu that we were given at the beginning. It's just this one sheet has pictures, like a scallops on it and all these little things for the courses. She's like, I only see 6 things here. And she's like, how many more are there? Because we haven't gotten 4 of them. And we've been there for like 4 hours. And I remember her looking at me and I said, the way they do this is that there's several in-betweens, and there's the wine, and there's this, and there's this. And I started talking to her, and she looked at me and said, you knew we were not going to be out of here at 10. And she was so effing pissed at me. She was so mad. And we didn't leave that place until 11:45 midnight. And I'm telling you, we rushed the end of this meal. We'd have been there till 1 a.m. And she looked at me couldn't have been more exact to, you knew we were going to die. You took me into this place and you fucking knew what you were doing to me.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized this movie's real shit. It was great.
There's so many good spots like that, like her coming to this, because when the sous chef commits suicide, like he blows his head off, right? And by the way, the background chefs so quickly they draped the kitchen, they had the plastic down, and they like scooped him up and got him out of there. Like when you see like a chef drops an egg on the ground, like in a fine kitchen, it's like there's a towel and a scraper, and it's scooped up and it's gone, and you almost never knew that an egg had ever fallen on the floor. Within 3 seconds, they do the same with the chef's body. Like just that the way that they carried him out, I thought, where is this going and what is happening? But there was every character's realization that it was real started to unfold and unravel. And then they started to, when he finally announces that everyone is there to die, like it gets really interesting really quick watching each one try to come to terms with it. And by the way, Judith Light's character is the greatest because she kind of gives Anya Taylor-Joy permission to leave when she gets the opportunity, she kind of shoots her out. But
it's great that not only is it the deaths, the way people die, the way people are showing other people die, the gamesmanship of it. I mean, for instance, I've been to restaurants very similar to this. Some of them in like remote places in Europe where you mentioned Favakin or something like that, where like mid-course, they'll give you an axe and you have to go outside and they will say, this mulberry grows 1,000 feet from the place. Here's an axe. Whoever can bring back a spring of mulberry, is the winner. I'm not kidding. This is a real thing that happens in some of these effing restaurants. What? And so when they were like, all the men run and we're going to catch you, I was like, this shit really happens. Like, this is not it seems so far-fetched. And to the casual viewer of this film, like my mom or somebody who's like, I'm just going to watch a film and then holy shit, it's devolving into chaos.
Yeah.
The orchestration of the way this happens, I want people to know there's not a second of this that wasn't thought out from the real world.
Absolutely. Although I do want to say, I'm not sure if your farming credentials went down by 10 notches or more, that you use an axe to pick mulberries, but okay.
Well, all right. It's more of like a little hatchet or something, like or shears or something.
Yeah. What kind of mulberries are you hunting for? But there's almost all those spots. I mean, and I actually was thrilled to find out that they modeled so many of the dishes on real dishes at real restaurants. And parts of the restaurant, like the spice rack, is 100% replica of the one that was at El Bulli in Spain. Like they really went in there and were like, we're going to make sure this is and like with the rock and the scallop and the seaweed and all that stuff. Like you would see that at Single Thread, you would see that
for sure.
at Atelier Cren. Like they just killed it. They did so good. The one part I'd never really got or understood that much, and I understand that he hated her, but like his mom sitting in the corner just quietly getting drunk. Like I just kept going like, what's her deal? Like, is it just because he hates her? And it turns out he does, but still, like I never quite understood that one so much.
I was very much a fan that this guy is so okay. There's two things I want to unpack, and I want to start with the open kitchen.
Yeah.
All right. So restaurants that have an open kitchen, there is this like, and it's my favorite thing because they always take you to see the kitchen and they are like, and people take pictures in front of the kitchen or they're like, look at how synchronized they are. Look how clean everything is. I want to tell everybody listening, if you go in a closed kitchen at a restaurant, the F word is as common as the word the, okay? It is one of the more contentious places you can be. Somebody's yelling, wipe this plate, get this thing out. This is hot, fire this. Oops, I forgot to do this with the lobster. It's a mess. And that's how kitchens really are. So when you have an open kitchen, which 95% of these type of restaurants do, it's kind of like you have a viewing thing while you dine. You can watch them it's like watching a fish tank. But there is this incredible tension if you know how to spot it, that takes place in those kind of kitchens. And the only way those kitchens function is in a military type way. The chef you do not ever step out of line with the chef. You don't mess up. You follow the script. You don't, there is no such thing as being able to drop a plate and going, whoops, let's bring in the mop and bring in the guy from the dishwasher has to come up and mop something right now. That doesn't happen in an open kitchen. So you can't make mistakes. But that breeds this element of people sitting there fuming under their breath without saying it. And there's an amazing aspect to, if you watch the film again and you watch that kitchen and you watch the way they respect and fear that chef and the speech, it's like the speech that he gives to the sous chef before he kills himself about like this, do you want to be me? Yeah. No. Did you want to be like me? Yes. But you never will be because you don't have the talent. And he's like, yes, sir. And he's like, so this will be the best you can ever be. And he serves his meal and then he kills himself. And like, there is this element of like, they say all of the things that are the tension in an open kitchen outwardly in this, and then you have this chef in Ralph Fiennes that got exactly what he wanted. He got this restaurant. He got all the prestige. He got the fandom. He got the worship. And he hates himself, he hates his job, and he's gone to look inward and find what he does disgusting. And I think that is another thing about reaching a pinnacle of a mountain, whether it's in writing or food or sports, where you begin to you resent the thing that you wanted and realize, why can it be simpler? The only way I can do it is to do it more and more and more and more. And I think that there's something incredible if you've ever worked for or with a chef of this kind of level. There's this inner, what do I do next type of thing? And you have to keep topping yourself. And there's an unhappiness, not with everybody. I know plenty of very happy chefs and they find peace.
Of course.
But this nailed the spider web of all of the things that I think a very tension-filled open kitchen takes in.
Oh, yeah. And side note, Jason, I just say I'm very happy for you that you'll never have to deal with that. I reached the pinnacle of my craft moment. So good for you. Just keep on climbing, buddy. You got a long way to go.
It's funny. After this podcast, I'm going to go out and shoot myself in the backyard because it's never going to get any better than this, and it's not very good.
Man, by the way, if you do, way to commit to the podcast. Like that's really like bravo. Wow.
I wish I had a sound effect right now. Just walk away and.
But I think that, like, to your point, though, like when the chef looks at Nicholas Holt's character and says, "You have sucked the joy from my craft," like, I just thought it is so true. You know, like you think about that kind of overwhelming neediness that he had. You know, and when he makes him go in the kitchen and cook, that's like
it's one of my favorite thing is the description. It's like
exactly.
It's like this shitty thing with some stuff thrown on top, and this fucking undercooked lamb with this shitty sauce or whatever. It's so good.
Yeah. He asks for butter and leeks, and he's like, "Oh, pay attention, everyone." Butter and leeks. Pay attention, everyone.
It's pretty good.
It's so good.
It's pretty good. I mean, that whole thing is, it's kind of like the contempt. And obviously, again, it's not like chefs really feel this way, but the contempt a chef would have for somebody who's like, I'm a huge fan of yours. And it's like, you have no idea what I do, how I do it. Yeah. And I'm glad you know what molecular cooking is, but you have no fucking clue. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that I think, you know, it's like someone, again, at the top of their career, in an explosive moment would want to tell a critic, like, you don't understand what it is that I'm trying to do or what, but you can't. And if you ever do, you know, your career's over. But
we kind of forgot to mention her, but that he has the critic there that kind of like made his career. And when he's printing out the pancakes with like pictures and stuff, and it's like all the restaurants that she had ruined with like bad reviews, like there's definitely, like, you can tell that somewhere the writers were like drunk with a chef somewhere, and they're like, "What would you want to do to a critic that ruined some of your friends?" And you can just see here's what I want to do.
Yeah, that just a quick tangent. That scene, and the actress's name is Janet McTeer. She's great in Ozark. She plays an attorney for the Mexican cartels, and she is brutal in that. But that particular situation and a scene in Birdman where Michael Keaton approaches the writer for the New York Times Theater are two of the great scenes in cinema history where somebody deals with a critic.
Yeah.
Because I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to tell you straight out, as a filmmaker, I fucking hate critics. I think it is the most useless. It is so useless and so important. Now, criticism is different, you know, writing about something, thinking intellectually about it, but somebody who has the power to just say, this show's only going to run for 5 weeks on Broadway because I wrote this article.
Yeah.
Ugh, it's the most disgusting shit in the world. But at the same time, my saying that is not going to make it go away. And on top of it, you know, none of them.
Well, only your mom's going to hear it. So
I feel differently if critics love my movies. But the So I think like if you take the venture capitalist bro-y douchebag guys, the three of them who are like, we know everybody, you know, we party with, and they're naming like A-Rod and all these baseball players are like, we know all these people. And then you take the Nicholas Hoult character who worships him, the Judith Light and her husband who are clearly very wealthy, waspy, you know, they really do a good job. And then also John Leguizamo's assistant, which should be mentioned as somebody who's like, you know, he like CCs her on emails where he's gonna fire her or whatever. I mean, it's like, this is, you know, it's not just a parody. That is reality in Hollywood. This fakeness of like, I know people and I think I know people and I'm important because I just am kind of bullshit. But John Leguizamo, it's great to see him play this role because it's like, if you go into this film knowing all the roles all these other people played, it's not just a culmination of them, but their roles, their personality, their public perception. I mean, they did a great job casting this thing.
Oh, absolutely. He is so good in it because he's also like, it comes through the screen of like him kind of trying to impress his assistant that somebody recognized him and like wanted to talk to him. He's like, see, I am still famous. And, you know, like that Leguizamo so perfectly cast that because he's kind of that, you know, if they put Brad Pitt in that role, not nearly as believable. Right?
No, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all. But Leguizamo was great. And P.S. shout out to another great food movie he was in, Chef, with Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau, yeah.
So he's been in 2 of my favorite food movies now of all time. So Leguizamo's like killing it.
It sounds like John Leguizamo from, I don't know him, I wish I did, but it sounds like he is a very cultured and also someone who's very willing to make fun of himself and be in these kind of roles. I mean, all you got to do is like watch Carlito's Way in this and you'll get the full picture of John Leguizamo. So, when you look at this conglomeration of every meal or every course that they serve and the place they do it, the whole beach, all of the stuff is farmed right there. It's all of the day. It's all, this is the real deal. And I think when it gets to the end, and I was wondering, as I'm sure many people watching it, how the hell are they going to end this thing?
Yeah.
How is it going to end? And it's been hinted over and over and over again that Anya Taylor-Joy is the she's the kink that is messing up his entire plans because whoever was supposed to be there was supposed to. And so I had a feeling she's going to make it. But the way she does, when it ended, I was like, am I satisfied with this ending? It took me about 5 minutes and I was like, yes. So I want to talk about the last course before we finish this.
All right.
The idea that she sees that he used to be a very good cheeseburger cook at a regular restaurant somewhere in the Midwest and uses that to say, it's kind of like, what's that story where you trick, there's like all those stories where you trick a monster into saying like, I bet you can't turn yourself small enough to go into this bottle. And then the monster goes in the bottle and you put a cork on it and you're like, I'm free. So it's kind of one of those interesting, like, story traps that seems contrived, but yet works within the world they created, where she challenges him to make a burger. And here's the funny part about this. He makes that burger and it's beautiful. And we've just witnessed carnage, blood everywhere. It's gross. Yeah. And they made that burger. And my wife turned to me and she goes, do you think Shake Shack would Postmates a burger right now? She was, my wife was like, I want a burger. She's like, I want a cheeseburger. And I was like, I want that burger. Yeah. I was like, this looks fucking great.
Doubt. So I think that, to your point, like, he's obsessed about everything in his restaurant the way any chef at that level is. Like, you're obsessed about the linens on the tables ironed perfectly. The ruler that comes out to measure the distance of the fork to the edge of the table.
And that's real. That's real.
Happens all the time. So the fact that he gets obsessed with the fact that everybody in the restaurant was hand chosen by him to be there, and she's not. She was the last minute substitute that came with Nicholas Holt's character. He gets so obsessed about it that he can't let it go. He keeps calling her into the kitchen. Then he takes her back into his office. Then he takes, but when he gets confirmation from her in his office that she's an escort and in the service industry, and he kind of is like, are you one of us or are you one of them? To me, it's kind of like he's trying to find a way to let her out in his head. Not necessarily yet in the movie, but like in his head, you can start to see him, to me, crumble a little bit with that. And when she taps into the last time this guy was happy, probably truly joyful, was as a burger, flat top guy, at a joint. She gets into that. She taps into that. She takes her bite. She asks for it to go. And when she's out there on the boat and he's done the whole s'mores implosion of the place, I asked myself the exact same question. Is this how it ends? Is this how it's going to end? Is this where we're going to leave this? Because this has been a ride. This has been a roller coaster ride, and this is how it's going to end. And when she stops to eat the burger and watch the carnage, like, I was like, oh, I love it now. I just love the fact that she didn't just escape and run. She's like, ooh, let me sit here on the bow of this boat, enjoy this burger, and watch these assholes burn. I loved it, man. I loved that ending. I thought it was absolutely satisfying. But because she didn't just run, if it had just been her in the boat streaking across the bay and, oh, she's the damsel in distress, it's finally going to be safe, that would have been much less satisfying. But the fact she stops, turns around, gets out her burger and takes that big bite, like the one that you and I were jonesing for. Like, I loved it. I thought it was a brilliant way to wrap it up. Because otherwise, how do you wrap it up?
Well, I also really like the idea that she starts the entire film with having a cigarette and he says, you can't smoke. And we're of a different generation. I mean, I don't even know if people smoke anymore. I don't know if that's a thing, but like, to have a character who's like trying to go to the bathroom just to have a cigarette to like get me out of this for like 3 minutes. She doesn't care about it messing up her taste buds. She looks at this as food. And then when she takes a bite of that burger, you can see in her eyes, holy shit, this is a good burger.
Yeah.
So I want to tell one quick story. So I happen to adore Single Thread. We did a whole episode on pairings on it. And I love Chef Kyle Connaughton, but you know, Kyle has to live in this world. So he has a restaurant that's very, I won't say similar. Nobody dies there that I've seen, but but they have very like, you know, they source stuff. They have their own garden, you know, it's a whole thing. And I recommend eating at that place if you ever get the chance. But the interesting thing is one time we were there and we were filming for pairings and Kyle said to us, are you guys hungry at all? And I was like, sure. But like, you know, I don't know if you're going to make me this crazy, you know, duck that came from this farm in Hokkaido, you know, whatever it was. And he was like, no, I'm going to make, you know, he goes, I'm just going to make maybe a salad and, you know, I'm going to do some like pulled chicken or something on top or whatever. And I was like, okay. So he made a salad. Now, let me explain something. This guy made a salad. Nothing. I mean, like by definition, this is a salad with chicken on the top of it. It's the best fucking salad I think I've ever eaten in my life. It had nothing different than any other person would have it. He made it in 4 seconds. He just opened up some cold drawers below the counter and just pulled some shit together. This was not planned. And that is another moment I took when this guy made that cheeseburger, is that these chefs, they can cook. They live in the circus and they have to do all these things and make, you know, it's got to be steam and foam and all the things. But if you were to go to a chef like Kyle Connaughton or Ralph Fiennes' character in this movie and you were to say, give me mac and cheese, I'm going to tell you, he's going to make mac and cheese in the same amount of time you would or less. And it's going to be the best goddamn mac and cheese you've ever had. They can do this. They are that good. Yeah. And that's kind of lost in the fact that they spend their whole time in the carnival. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's also kind of like that chicken salad that you had or the burger on camera. It kind of speaks to the fact that there's just, it's almost innate in chefs of that caliber to just know exactly how to, it's instinctive, it's reflexive. They're pulling together the right flavors. They're not overdressing it like I would, or, you know, they're not using just the white meat. They're mixing in the dark. You know, they just do all those things reflexively that make it such a great something so simple, something so great, which I think is fabulous. And I know we're running out of time, but like, I just want to there's another film that I think is kind of a great food film. Spanglish.
Let's talk about it. Oh, Spanglish. Oh, I thought you were going to, Spanglish.
No, but listen, I just want to throw in Spanglish here real quick, just because Thomas Keller is the technical consultant on that one. And Adam Sandler's character plays a chef that gets like his third Michelin star, you know, blah, blah, blah. And there's a scene where it's late, it's after the restaurant, you know, and the chef's back home and he's just by himself. It's midnight and he's just thirsty and hungry and he wants to read the paper. And he makes like a BLT with like a fried egg on it, right? And you see him kind of putting it together and pouring like the perfect kind of IPA beer and slicing it, and the egg is perfectly runny. And I remember, this is how long ago I watched this film, there were DVD extras. And
there's still, I'm still into Blu-rays and that stuff. Oh man.
And in the DVD extra, like they show Adam Sandler in the kitchen at the French Laundry with Thomas Keller teaching him how to make that sandwich. And it's just as kind of like same thing. Like it seems innocent and reflexive, but he ends up making the sandwich and you see Adam Sandler take a bite and he's just like, holy shit. And you're like, yeah, I guess when TK makes you a BLT, it's a real deal BLT, you know, it's just fabulous.
It's something incredible that this level of a chef can make you a chocolate chip cookie and you'll get divorced if you need to for it. It's like whatever it takes. I mean, and that goes to say a little bit about the love we talk about of this film has for the industry, because it could be looked at as a total parody and all of these things. But as you said at the top, I believe this film is a love letter to this type of a thing. I also think this type of a thing is so overexposed and over diluted that it needed something like this to come from a different angle. It's kind of like Wall Street was with the financial markets. You know, it's like Wall Street really liked Wall Street. The movie Wall Street was not, it did not hate the financial situation in the United States. It loved it. Yeah. But it needed to be approached in that angle so that we can all breathe and go, hey, can we be less serious about this for a minute before we go back to being serious about this bullshit? Yeah. So, well, my final thoughts on the menu, which, you know, I know we're running out of time, is that you should watch it. It's on HBO Max, and it's also, you know, you can get a Blu-ray of it probably.
I would love to see the extras.
I'm sure there are plenty. Let's just take 1 minute here, and you and I each have picked a film that we think are instrumental in how we got here with films like The Menu and Chef's Table and all of the things that are permeating everything, SOMM TV, everything.
Yeah, SOMM TV. Yeah, present company included. So when I was thinking about this, I went to a movie that, to me, because it was a movie that appeals to, like we often like to say, regular people, right? Not just people in the industry, chefs and winemakers and sommeliers and whatnot. And to me, the one that brings you into this world, this fine dining tourist kind of world, is The Trip with Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon, which is an outstanding movie. It's a buddy film. It covers one guy's jealousy of another one. It's unbelievably funny, laugh
It's
out
great.
loud, can't stop roaring funny. And yet it's pitched on the idea that Steve Coogan, real life Steve Coogan playing himself, is tasked by the London newspaper to go visit these 5 Michelin star restaurants all around England. And he's supposed to take his American girlfriend. She backs out at the last minute. And so he kind of goes down this list of friends he could maybe come to. And acquaintance Rob Brydon is kind of the last on the list and the guy that says yes. And so they drive around England in a Range Rover visiting these great restaurants and dining there, and really dining there. It's really well shot. It's beautiful, slightly behind the scenes look at these restaurants, but it's 2 guys
there's a lot of improv too. A lot of improv in that film.
So much,
It's very funny, and I think the 2 films that we picked are really, neither of them are in the genre of the horror kind of aspect, and there are some early films like The Cook, the Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, like I mentioned, which I wouldn't recommend watching. It's a dark movie, but if you want to see how beautiful Helen Mirren is in that film, go for it. But I think that's a really good pick. Mine is Tampopo, which is a 1985 Japanese film about a ramen shop. It is wild. It's both an experimental film and a straightforward narrative that kind of shows this restaurant. It's kind of spaghetti western-ish in its thematics, and I think it is, I don't say this with hyperbole, I think it's the greatest food film ever made, and I think it is the bomb that incited a lot of filmmakers to want to make films that had food in them, the way it's photographed, everything. That's on HBO Max. You should go watch that. Jonah, I am an enormous fan of yours, and I can't wait to get you back on this podcast. Anybody who's listening, hit us up on socials and tell us how much you don't want that to happen again, okay?
Yeah, except for Jason's mom. Just send me those nice, polite notes you often do and make me feel better about myself. Jason, thanks for having me back, and thanks for doing this one. This was a fun one. I love The Menu. I think we need to watch it together next time you're up.
I will definitely, I'll cosplay Nicholas Holt's character and kill myself during it. It'll be great.
I'll do Anya Taylor-Joy. It'll be perfect.
Oh, thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the SOMM TV podcast. Remember, subscribe to SOMM TV, SOMMTV.com. Tons and tons of movies and shows, 500 hours of educational content, all sorts of stuff. We look forward to talking to you again. Be safe, everyone.